The skit the kids did were, as you can see, was about Jesus being in the boat and the storm coming up. And the video clip we're going to watch today is another time there was a storm at sea. And this time Jesus came to rescue them during the storm. He wasn't sleeping at this point. And so we'll dim the lights down and we'll watch this short video clip. This is the movie that we're going to be seeing on Friday and Saturday night before Easter.
Seeing this miracle that Jesus had performed, the people there said, "Surely this is the prophet who was to come into the world." Jesus knew that they were about to come and seize him in order to make him king by force, so he went off again to the hills by himself. When evening came, Jesus' disciples went down to the lake, got into a boat, and went back across the lake towards Capernaum. Night came on, and Jesus still had not come to them. By then a strong wind was blowing and stirring up the water. Had rowed about 3 or 4 miles when they saw Jesus walking on the water. Coming near the boat, and they were terrified.
Don't be afraid. It is I.
Then they willingly took him into the boat. And immediately the boat reached land at the place they were heading for.
Kids, what do you think of that? Aren't you glad it wasn't that rocky out there? Well, the storms of life, the sermon title is Jesus Fights the Storms to Calm Ours. And right now, because of the announcement that Maria and I made, it has created kind of a mini storm in the lives of some of you in this church. But as seen in the video, storms do come in life, don't they? And they sometimes come suddenly, they come uninvited, and the results are things oftentimes we're not expecting. In 2012, there's already been some devastating tornadoes, haven't there, in our country, especially the southern part of our country, and a lot of loss of life and property. But even in the midst of those terrible situations, the best of what God puts in the hearts and the lives of men have come out and to the forefront as Christians testify over and over about the grace of God in their lives, and the neighbors gather to help their neighbors rebuild their lives. Well, Jesus is just like that. When we face the storms in life, He is ready to walk into those storms to calm every situation that we face. Within the first 2 years of our marriage, and I've told this story before, so forgive me, but I'm getting old and I repeat things. But in the first 2 years of our marriage, we took in a couple times some teenage boys. And the one strange thing that we took in, it was kind of strange to look back at it now, because Maria was just a teenager. And we're taking teenage boys into our home, so I just felt we were older at the time, but we weren't. She was just a teenager. But they had been kicked out of their homes, and life was difficult for them. But one of those boys, his name was Jerry Skiles. And I never would have dreamed back then that someday I would minister to his son, Justin Skiles, Jackie Davis's son-in-law. But anyway, he moved in with us, and it wasn't long, he learned how to milk the cows. We had 50 cows on our farm, and Maria and I decided that we wanted to take a mini vacation. We wanted to, you know, being dairy farmers, you don't hardly ever get away. And we wanted to take a mini vacation. We went to a marriage enrichment weekend. And so we took in, we had 2 cars, and we just didn't feel that we could trust Jerry with this car, the other car at home. And I don't know why I didn't just take the keys. But anyway, we took the other car up to my dad's, and we took off for the weekend, and Jerry was going to milk the cows. Told my dad and Mom, don't let him take the car. You know, he's got the mini bike down there, he can ride around all he wants. Well, the next morning, he come up Saturday morning, and he said he had a doctor's appointment and needed the car. And instead of taking him into the doctor's appointment, which I could never understand that, he says, okay, here's the keys. And he took off. Well, we had a great conference. It was really a blessing to be a part of that wedding marriage conference. And so this is my advertisement to you here, you young couples or older couples in the church. Jack Carey's going to be here on the 14th, Saturday the 14th. We're going to have a mini marriage seminar from 10 till 3. And so if you would like to be a part of that, let me know. Because I need to let him know if we're going to have it. We've got to make sure we're going to have enough people involved in it. Well, anyway, we got back from the conference. We stopped at my mom and dad's to pick up the car. And my dad said, well, he said, you know, Jerry had picked up the car on Saturday morning. He hasn't been back yet. And I had to milk your cows Saturday night and Sunday morning, but they're not milked yet. And here it was 7:30 already. And Jay said, you know what that's like. Those cows aren't real happy if you don't milk them on time, right? Yeah. So anyway, we went down there, and I had to get the cows milked. And finally, at 9:30 at night, I get into the house, and he's still not back with the car. Now, what are you going to do? You're going to call the sheriff's department. We thought about doing that. We had prayed about it. We had done everything we could do, but it come down to it, we didn't know what to do. And Maria had supper ready, and I ate supper, and about 10:30 that night, I saw we lived on a dead-end road, and here comes a car down the road, and I looked out and I watched, and sure enough, here's my 69 El Camino, nice shiny silver El Camino, but it had been modified. The front fender was all mashed in. And it wasn't one of those modifications that makes it look better for some reason. But anyway, it was all mashed in, and you know, if you put yourself in my shoes, you're probably getting a little upset. Maybe a little more than upset. Maybe you're becoming kind of angry about this, which, if anybody knows me, it takes a lot to make me angry. And I was really angry. You've seen those cartoons where the smoke comes out of the ears, right? They're really angry. I think that if Maria would have been looking at me, it would probably shh, you know, the smoke would have been coming out of my ears. But as I grabbed that door to go out, I said a quick prayer. I just said, Jesus, help me. And I went out there, and Jerry had stepped out of the car, and on the driver's side, the dent was on the passenger side, and I'm over there, I look it over, and I look at him, and he's just kind of trembling, and I says, Jerry, welcome home, supper's ready, come on in. And he just started bawling, because his dad used to beat him for any infraction. That's why he was kicked out of his home. But the grace of God came upon me, and I was able to share that grace of God with him. In the midst of that storm, Jesus helped me. Well, from our video scripture today, we saw that Jesus was facing a mini storm as the people were wanting to take him by force, make him king. Now, we don't think about that normally. We normally think, okay, there's that big storm at sea, but there was a mini storm taking place. Jesus had just fed the multitude. Thousands of people had just gotten fed. And now, all these people are gathered around, and they're going, hey, this guy would make a great king. We wouldn't have to work for our food anymore. He would just bless it and pass it out left and right. And food would be on the plate, on the table every time we wanted. And they says, this would make a great king. Well, he just kind of slipped out of the crowd and went up on the hillside by himself to get away from that storm. In the meantime, his disciples, they decided, you know, we can't do anything about it now. The people are wondering where he's at, and we need to get going. So they got in their boat, and they started heading back to Capernaum, which is kind of their home base. And they had gotten about 3 to 4 miles, it says in the Bible there, and a storm came upon them. And the Sea of Galilee has got some pretty big storms. They would be like what you saw. You know, it's not just a little thing like Lake Kielman. You know, if you don't know Lake Kielman, a storm, you know, you probably could walk on water yourself because it's so green. But anyway, it was a pretty nasty storm, and the disciples were frightened for their lives. And I can understand it. You know, I remember when we went on a cruise cruise one time, and we were coming out of San Juan, Puerto Rico, and their storm was coming upon the boat. And that thing just up and down, and we went up on the deck, and that thing would come down. Boom! You just hear that thing go through the whole boat. Boom! It just echoes through that thing. You know, and we had eaten supper, and a lot of people had left early from eating supper. I don't know why. They just kind of went like, and went running out of the room. But we finished supper and went up on the deck, and we're up there, and the storm is just going like crazy, and it's windy, and I don't think it had started raining yet, but it was just super windy, and the waves were pretty big. And so Maria, she got kind of that, you know, that queasy feeling, so she headed down to her room, and I was up there, man, this is great stuff, you know, boom, you know, having a great time. And I thought I'd better check on her, and you know, eyes do a funny thing on you. I was doing fine until I started down the hallway to our room, and everything starts going like this as you're going down the hallway. And it's all I could do to get in that room and into that bathroom as fast as I could, and that was the end of my lunch. But the disciples are on the ship, and the storm comes up, and the waves are great, and they're bailing out. I love it. Trey did such a great job bailing that boat out, laying there. I wouldn't want to look at those waves either. I would have been hiding down there. But they looked out in the midst of the storm, and there they see someone coming at them. Now, of course, at first they didn't know it was Jesus. Obviously, they didn't think it was anybody in particular they knew, because not many people are out walking on water in a storm, or even on a calm day. But they looked out and they saw Jesus. Eventually, as they got closer, they could see it was Jesus. And now they're even more frightened because they don't know if he's dead and he's a ghost or what. But Jesus speaks the word, and he speaks calm into the situation. And then he gets into the boat, and the storm ends. And the sea's calm once again. As we look at this, then, we see that Jesus allows storms to come into our lives for a purpose. For a purpose. He doesn't create the storms, but he allows them to come into our lives to help us. Sometimes it shows the weaknesses we have in our life. You know, we think we're pretty macho some days, and you know, then that storm comes up in our life, and we find we're not so macho. We have some weak areas in our lives, and we need some help, don't we? We need somebody to take us and encourage us and guide us along the way. Sometimes those storms bring us to a level of needing to rely on others in our lives. You know, we just can't be our own person all the time. We've got to have others that are helping us. And most often, those storms in life awaken us to the need of a Savior. The need of a Savior. When it comes to the point where you feel you're drowning in every situation you face in life, you call out to God, and you need a Savior.